Good
Just
to
a
start.
second. Yeah. So thank you very much, Ankit, for joining us. And everybody, welcome to Creators Arena, Season 1, Episode 1. The goal of this series is to bring experts like Ankit, who's been in the field doing great stuff on products and growth, help all of us share some of their knowledge. So today we have Ankit, who is right now in working with Myntra and is responsible for growth. Overall, Ankit has extensive experience of more than a decade in various companies like Myntra, Creditech, Times Internet, Naspers, and he's also a co-founder, which has also been a founder. And I strongly believe that entrepreneurs make really good product guys. So he started something in online grocery more than a decade back, and recently on fashion trends forecasting as well. Uh, as he says that he's traveled to more than 20 countries and worked in two continents. So from this point, Ankit, all yours. Please feel
Yeah,
free to go ahead and add on to the intro if you want. So
sure. No, I think Chandra, that's enough about me. I would really appreciate if the guys, you guys can keep pouring in your questions. I want the session to be more interactive. Earlier, otherwise it will be too much of Gyan theory. I don't want that. So I would want to help you guys as much as I can, and it will be very easy for me to answer specific questions. And probably in the process, if I try to ask you for the clarification, please bear with me. I think nomenclature which I use may differ a little bit here and there with what you understand. So may say take some time to get on the same path, but be patient. I think I will also try to be with the same. And it will be really helpful if you guys can raise a hand or put it in the chat and keep your questions, and I will take them together after end of 30 minutes or so. Cool. So I think, yeah, that's about me. I mean, I've more than a decade in industry, tried to create my own startups and was not successful both of the times. So that's majorly about me. Today's session, I would try to cover following points. Considering the theme of the session is around A/B test and experimentation. These are the topics which I will cover. Mainly why experimentation, why it is necessary, how experimentation helps a PM, a few points on recipe for an experiment or growth team, and how experiment driven product management helps. Then success from some of the few experiments or features we built at Myntra, how we went about it, what are the major themes we have collated. So I'll briefly speak about that as well. So I think let me start the session with inviting Akshay, and he will speak something about experimentation and A/B tests.
There's no science without experiments. एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं करेंगे तो हमें अपने आप को साइंटिस्ट कहने का कोई अधिकार नहीं हो जाए। तेल जब पूरी के लिए गर्म है तो उसको और गर्म नहीं करते, ऑफ करके गैस बचा के पूरियां तलते रहते हैं। इस होम साइंस की टेक्निक से हम लोग मार्स जाना चाहते हैं। You lost your mind?
Cool. So that was a small snippet from a movie, Mangalyaan, and here Akshay Kumar tries to convince his seniors about one crazy idea, doing some kind of drama to share his idea. So I'll go on the next slide and tell why I bring a simile between what I'm going to speak about and what Akshay says. And so let me, after Akshay, probably let me speak about what are the other guys in industry and how do they consider experimentation or A/B test. So you will probably go through tons of videos on A/B test on companies like Netflix, Google, Expedia, Booking.com, Airbnb. So these are some of the videos which I really loved watching, and this is just a snippet. So these are all the guys who have worked extensively on A/B test, experimentation platform, and they contribute a lot of the organizations and their own success to A/B tests. So that's why I bring in the element of what other product managers think. Now, the next slide is about the leaders. So openly, Larry Page, Mark Zuckerberg, Satya Nadella, even Jeff Bezos openly say that the reason of their success of their company is experimentation, A/B tests, and that's how they credit that the growth had been driven majorly by these experiments. So these are famous quotes from famous leaders that why or how experimentation or A/B tests have helped them be individually grow as well as their organizations to as well grow and reach that pinnacle of success. Um, to give you a hint on that, so 2 years ago, I got an opportunity to visit Bay Area in my team and visited Facebook, Google, Netflix, Pinterest, ANB, etc. So they consider or they imbibe the culture of experimentation and A/B test to that huge extent that if you go to the washrooms, the WC where you actually um, pee, you on in the front of that they actually have put in printouts how to evaluate the experiment's outcome. They encourage each and every engineer and empower them, and this is the steps to take to measure an outcome of an experiment. And this is the kind of culture which they want to imbibe in each and every new hire and in existing hires, because they are so serious about A/B test and experimentation. So the first section I want to reiterate and say what are the key learnings from the first section. First is experimentation as a culture is critical for growth. If the companies or organizations fail to experiment, they fail to grow. And that's how the video is also related, where Akshay Kumar working in ISRO, one of the very large government organization, bureaucratic structure. He also speak that there is no science without experiment. So unless you A/B test, unless you are open to accept that you can fail as well, it's very difficult to say that, okay, you will grow either. At the same time, it's very difficult to challenge the status quo. I will talk in the next slides that how experimentation can help you challenge the status quo and in a more subtle way. And some of the challenges I'm sure a lot of PMs would also face in their organizations. So let me start with a question. So let's say we had a wonderful feature and we launched in April. And after April, this is the metrics. So let's say the metrics was average revenue per user or click-through rate. So before April, this was the graph, and after April, this is the graph. Would you say this feature was successful or not? I'll open the chat. You guys can probably comment in the chat section your views that keep your response flowing in. Cool. So I think I have a decent amount of feedback. So this one is a tricky one. It's not so easy. I tell you why. So this is what, let's say, actually what happened. So the world is this yellow line with the feature, and world could have been the blue line without the feature. So the reason I show this graph, it's clearly articulates why A/B test is important. I think some of you guys did mention in chat that it's impossible to comment based on the knowledge or the information I share. And there are many reasons for it. External factors, seasonality is one factor. Some of you are right that, okay, maybe there's additional metrics which may be required. But this graph actually articulates why A/B test is critical, because it's very difficult to say whether the experiment was successful or failure without doing an A/B test live on the users. So that's the key learning from this section. Now let me go to the next section. It's about how experimentation or A/B test help a day-to-day life of a product manager. The first thing is it helps you manage cross-stream conflicts. So occasionally we as a PM work across PMs from other teams, business folks from other teams, and they have their own success metrics, own OKRs, and they have their own deliverables as well. So it becomes very challenging to collaborate, and sometimes there may be a possibility your metrics may not be, or experiment or feature may not support their hypothesis or experiment. But experimentation is one area where it's easy to defend it. So you can say that my success metrics or L0 metrics is X, and whatever you have as success metrics, I am okay to have that as an L1 metrics or secondary metrics, and we will only roll it out if all these guardrails are satisfied. So for example, at Facebook they have certain 5 as L0 metrics, 5 L0 metrics. They have around 15 secondary metrics. So no experiment can go live only if those L0 metrics are met and those L1 metrics are going downtrend. So that's how they have built their experimentation culture. But they encourage everybody to go and test hypotheses on those L0 and L1 metrics. The second advantage of an experiment-driven team or culture is that it's easy to handle hippos, the highest paid person's opinion. They feel that, okay, I have been in industry for so long, I have seen this work, this is how it will work, but wrong. Even in my experience and with the team I work for, pretty talented, 75% of the time we fail and my opinions go wrong. And that's the truth. If I fail to recognize it, I will fail to learn that, okay, there is a better way to do it. But that's the kind of culture you like A/B test bring in. So you never say that, okay, yes, you are wrong. You say that, yes, you are also correct, but there is a chance that the other option can also be correct. Let's go and test it out. I am okay to be wrong. Maybe you are the only one who's right, but let's test it out. The third key advantage for PMs is it helps you break your larger ideas into smaller features. So we always talk about MVPs and how MVP driven product management is a good way to do. The beauty of A/B test is if you really want A/B test to work, you can actually make only one change at a time. And it forces you to break your feature into smaller pieces, because if you make too many variables to change, you will not be able to analyze what was the causality of that effect. So maybe you wanted to do an entire checkout revamp, but if you make design changes also, copy changes also, and change the position of widgets, so there will be too many moving pieces and you will not be able to analyze the experiment. Hence, A/B test as a tool also helps in breaking the bigger features by the virtue of the experimentation itself. The last part, it also helps you actually know and learn that this is the direction you should take and not take. Not take, I highlighted specifically because that's more important. We know, okay, based on our biases that, okay, this will work. But because of the outcome of A/B test, we know that, okay, this is not the direction it takes. So for example, the graph which I was showing, if we knew that, okay, this is the A/B test outcome, we probably would not take that direction in future. Otherwise, from the data which we saw, it looked like that it's improving anyways. So that was a third section. Now I'll move quickly to the recipe of experimentation. What are the critical, let's say, blocks to do experiments? What are the must-haves to do an A/B test? So first thing I would say is the process. You ought to have a good backlog. So you should continuously work within your team, outside your team. And for that, you should probably have regular brainstorming sessions. And it's very important to involve all the teams, because very frequently, A, we will run out of ideas. That can happen. B, we can also be on, because of our own biases in the way of thinking, right? We can continue to think only one silos of experiments, on one type of experiments based upon our experiences in past, based upon our learnings in the past. And that's why it is important to involve people from different teams. Maybe they have certain knowledge which we don't have. For example, give you an example from Myntra. If I just look after conversion and return rate, for example, and I see that, okay, return rate for genes is very high, and I do not know how the discussions and the category managers had at the onboarding. So one of the things is, for example, in jeans, the share of marketplace may be much higher. So that means we have a less control over our inventory. So if I would not be speaking to category managers, I would never be able to know that, okay, that can be a possible reason. And I will keep on looking at the data which I have. I will probably look at secondary metrics, device type, city level, postcode, but I will probably look at a very small direction of business unit type, like what is the return rate of jeans versus a shirt, and try to find some correlation. But this, for example, a specific example that in the last few months, the share of marketplace has increased in jeans, and that may be the reason of return rate increases. I will not be able to find unless the other teams give me that input. The next set is, as I earlier also mentioned, test only one change at a time. If you try to mix too many variables within test, you will not be able to learn specifically what really caused that effect. And then the next step in the process is continuous learning. So a lot of time there will be periods where none of your hypotheses will be successful, but don't bog down with that. What is important, you continuously learn, and it's okay to have negative outcome, because you know exactly you have to do the opposite of it. To give you an example, we thought that our experience on product pages for bank showing the bank offers is suboptimal. So we made a fancy design with the help of the UX team that this is how our product pages or bank offer should be visible. We made it visual, made it concise, and still the experiment failed. We invested decent amount of, everybody in the company was very happy about the design and the way we were communicating, but it actually didn't give us the uptake in our success metric. But what we learned in the process, somebody said that maybe product page is not the right place to show these bank offers, and we never thought about that. We thought that the current state is too verbose, and hence we should improvise it, and that would give us benefit. But the next experiment we did was we tried to completely remove the bank offers from the product pages, and that turned out to be successful. So if I would be bogged down by what everybody says, everybody, not a single person says the design is not good, but data completely told me another story. And that's what I would say, that it's very important to continuously learn and repeat. Okay, just give me a moment. I will just shut down the door of my room and come back. Okay, so the next important part in the experimentation platform is the tool itself. So this has three major dimensions. First is the user assignment. To give you some hints, and we had a long debate within the company, at what level the user should be assigned. So one of the common problems is, should we assign it at an email ID level? Should we do it at a user ID level or UIDX level? Or should we use any other identifier? How should we make sure that the distribution is completely random? And stuff like this. So usually sophisticated companies who have big and large experimentation platform, they make sure these questions are answered in the beginning. So at Myntra, Flipkart, and some other companies, we run the experiment or user assignment at a device ID level. So there is a positive and negative side as well. That should we do it at a UIDX level, or should we do it at a device level? We had a device level because there is a significant chunk of users who don't log in, and at least they will be part of experiments. The other reason was, if you keep it at a device ID level, we can keep the experiment or the experience synchronous, even when a person is not logged in and they're logged in. So if we do the experiment at device ID, their experience will be consistent and coherent. So we choose a device ID as a key metric. Second is statistical significance. Now, So guys, I'm specifically taking a lot more time on this slide and on tools because a lot of questions were also around this. So just speaking about statistical significance, there is no hard rule or guardrail that 90% or 85% or 95% is correct. So larger organizations, for example, Facebook, Google, they follow 95%. When I spoke to Netflix guys, they also follow 95%. I think Pinterest follows 90%. Myntra follows 90%. Some other companies, I spoke about Macy's, they follow 70%. So there is no right or wrong answer here, but definitely the higher it is, the better is your power or the confidence you have in the success of the experiment. Also, it's still statistics, so you never know. It's not 100% accurate. So, and there is always a balancing act. So the more you wait to reach statistical significance of 90, 95, there is an opportunity cost involved that you may delaying the benefit which it can bring to the organization. So at that time, a lot of times, senior stakeholders in the organization may take a call that even if it is 80% significant, let's go ahead and roll it out. And there are ample amount of literature available, and let me know if you guys need that on what should be the ideal statistical significance. One other parameter for tool is the visualization. A lot of times you will see if you're using specifically so there are two approaches in evaluating successful. One is probabilistic or Bayesian method, and then there is normal distribution or frequentist approach. Frequentist approach usually plot two metrics in a normalized graph, and then you can see where exactly is the standard deviation, how is the mean moving, etc. So, but I would say the tool also need to have good amount of visualization for you to quickly analyze. Maybe the metrics changed around certain time period, and okay, during that time period some epoch occurred. Maybe it was demonetization epoch, maybe it was a sale event, and that causes the difference in the experiment. So if you have a good visualization tool, it will help you analyze the experiments. The third important recipe for an A/B test is a metrics. Although it sounds small, but it's very critical. So most of the organizations have a well-defined North Star metrics. To give you an example, so for example, Airbnb has a nights booked per user. Facebook has daily active users. Quora has a number of questions a user answers. WhatsApp has number of messages sent per user. Netflix has monthly retention per user. So it's very important to have that L0 metrics definitely as a part of your experiment output. So otherwise, some other guys when I asked the question, they were mentioning if it's CTR, it's okay. For conversion, probably not. So I think maybe I can elaborate on that. So what happens is, let's say I made a change on product page and was able to increase the number of users who go to the back page from the product page. And during that process, maybe I made a color change, or I made the back button a little larger, or made something, but more number of people ended up going to back. If I consider that as a successful metrics, I am missing out on the part that my end goal of the company was to make the user transact. So by some hack, if I am able to get more number of people to the next step, does not necessarily mean that I was able to meet my North Star metrics. And I think that's what I guess a lot of other guys were also mentioning, that even the CTR is increasing, conversion may not be increasing, right? And that's why it is important to have only one North Star metric or one primary metric as a part of your experiment. And then probably multiple secondary metrics. What I mean by that is what really caused that. So by making a button larger, my hypothesis was that the number of clicks on that button should go up, and the number of clicks on the wish list button should go down. So people should start adding more items to the back, and corresponding they will go and purchase it. So secondary metrics will be number of clicks on wish list, number of users using wish list, etc. And that is very important, because I would be able to establish that my hypothesis is validated or invalidated. If the numbers of click on wish list are also increasing and add to bag is also increasing, that means somehow my experiment was successful, but not because of the change which I brought in. It's just a random thing. Probably I need to run it longer, or there is a bias somewhere. But secondary metrics, I would say, keep you honest, keep you give you more insights. What caused that change? The last part of it is the team itself. Pretty important. It's important, critical to have analysts, PMs, engineering designers, all focused on the core North Star metrics, because all of them are equally responsible partner in that process of making it successful. And hence it's, I think, pretty important to have a pod structure, all of them together, working together, sitting together, and working for the common goal. Okay, so I'll go to the next section. So briefly, we'll mention about the process which we follow at Myntra. It's a 6 to 8 week of iterative process. Starts with ideation, whether it's coming from our own team or external team, some data analysis to build our hypothesis and funnel numbers, etc. The next step in the process is to go to the review forum. Review forum has guys and PMs or head of products from different departments, head of design, head of revenue. They will critique the hypothesis. We go usually here with some low fidelity mockups. So to take feedback and again know if they have prior learning or experience on that particular hypothesis. The next step in the process is, once the features are approved, we go to a prioritization sequencing with our engineering folks. That's where we do story pointing. And in the prioritization, we use a specific framework called RICE, RICE. It stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. It helps us identify the features which we are really banking upon, and as well as keeping the organizations or the engineering teams total requirement or bandwidth available to us also in mind. And so we use RICE framework to prioritize our features. The next stage in the experimentation is to actually roll out the experiments and see how the initial number look. Should I continue running it? It's reaching like 70-75% significance. Probably I should keep it running longer. If it is going negative, even for 2 weeks, probably I should shut it down and look at the secondary metrics. So that's what happens in experimentation phase. The last phase is when we decide to either roll it out or conclude an experiment. And then we look out different secondary metrics. How is it going in different cities? How it looking in iOS versus Android? How it looking for different gender? How it looking for different article or categories like shirt versus jeans? And basically from that, we learn a lot that this is my FIDF successful. So I have to think like this in future experiments. And that eventually becomes our theme. If we work around these themes, we are able to get more successful experiments. So yeah, typically this is the cycle on which we work at Myntra, and been decently successful so far. Let me go through some of the parameters specifically on Myntra about it. So the team has around 25 members, and in the short span of around now 24 months, we have been able to now evaluate almost more than 800 product ideas. So they were, what I mean by that is across different teams, different product ideas or features were at some time at least were evaluated, thought through that, okay, should we go and build it or not? Of these, almost 50% went through at least to the rough mocks or low fidelity mocks. 50% actually were presented to the forum. And in this time period, we have delivered, actually rolled it out to our users, more than 200 features till date. So if you see in 20 months, 200 features, it's very big achievement. Usually if you work on organizations, the pace of churn out of experimental feature is much lesser than this. And yeah, so our overall success rate, now success rate I measure in terms of the North Star metrics, which we have chosen. In our case, the North Star metrics was average revenue per user. And the success rate means at least 25% experiments were showed us more than 90% statistical significance when we measured the outcome between control and test with a lens of average revenue per user. Well, that also mean that 70 to 75% times I was wrong. And I would again harp on this point because this is very important. For any product leader, any business leader, if you read, they only grow 25% times, 70% times they are wrong. But those 75%, 70% times make them learn that what are the things they should not do, or probably do opposite of that. But for you to be right 25% times, you should be open to fail 75% times. And that's why it's very important to take in a constructive way. Even if you fail, you are still learning. Yeah, but there are times when the experiments are inconclusive. They are like 60% successful, 70% successful, and the outcome is also like 0.1, 0.15. So as a growth PM, there is nothing more worse than an inconclusive outcome. So if it failed, I know exactly I have to do opposite of this, and I would see the success. If I'm not reaching statistical significance, I know maybe I will have to run it longer and I will reach statistical significance. But an inconclusive experiment is nothing which gave me no learning. I was not able to figure out whether my hypothesis was validated or invalidated. And that's the success of the team, that we were able to increase revenue per user by more than 20%. So now that brings me to the final part of the presentation, which is I'll speak about some of the things which really worked for us and the themes on which we, over a period of doing these 400 experiments, we found out that these are the themes which really work. And because they are themes, they are agnostic of the industry or the domain per se, and you can use it as it is to define the experiments in your domain. So to give you an example, remind users about the core benefits. So what are the core benefits of purchasing at Myntra? Maybe cash on delivery, maybe try and buy, maybe the discounts. So we use these methods or the benefits to highlight at specific points. So for example, a new user, we highlighted on the list pages as well as a checkout page, that or the payment page, very relevant information. If they are on list page, we make sure we tell them we sell genuine products. We make sure we tell them that we are selling them the right set of products, and they have the option to return within 30 days. We also highlighted certain coupons or benefits on pricing which they have. So these are 3 benefits. We highlighted them on the list pages. When the person reaches to product page, we started highlighting what are the benefits of the platform. So Myntra as a company, for example, we always do 7-step quality check. All the products are branded. We also make pride in saying that we get the new fashion. So these are the 3 benefits which are highlighted on the product pages. If the person goes towards checkout, then again on the payment page, maybe be concerned about trust, safety. They may be unsure that, okay, I may not be able to return or cancel the product. So then again, we highlight and benefits those to the users. And these are actual experiments. I will not go and detail construct, but we tried to highlight this information and they showed us success. The second theme is about scarcity and urgency. So FOMO, as you know, it works always and create a lot of anxiety in a lot of people. And it works on shopping, it works on B2B platforms, and to work for Myntra as well. So highlighting things like if you have less amount of inventory left of a particular product, only few left, only 5 left, that really helped Myntra and drive conversion. Urgency. So if like only X time left, if you order within next 2 hours, you will get by Tuesday. if you order by this, this is what you get. So this offer valid only for this much time. So these are the examples of urgency and scarcity. The third section is all the users love extra, free. So whenever we highlight something like free delivery also, people get excited. People take that in open arms and then convert more. Whenever we highlight that, okay, apart from the benefit of the discounts, you will get X additional loyalty points. Users are pretty excited by that, and conversions go up. So another theme which we see in our experiments is highlight and celebrate elements which create positive psych. Something like, yay, you got a free delivery. So that's something, create a positive sentiment that you have reached the particular threshold, you are just one step away. Similarly, we try to gamify our checkout experience. We added certain steps and say that, okay, you have completed this much of journey, and that helped us build that positive psych. So highlighting that, okay, you are saving this much. This is something which really helped us reduce our cancellations and returns. Highlighting that the style or the product which you have purchased matches the style of Hrithik Roshan or Anushka Sharma. So that brings in that element of positiveness. Users feel really happy about it. So when we celebrate these things, users tend to behave with a positive response. The next is, for example, using simple and concise copies. I'm sure a lot of blogs which were shared on the Slack channel as well speak about it. And then this app called Simple also was iterating that the benefits of keeping the copy and the text readable, legitimate, copy concise. So these are other experiments which we did at Myntra as well. Some of the elements on our product pages were too verbose about telling about when will you get the item, etc. We made sure it's let's say only 30% of the text what it used to be. And we had to really hard time convincing the folks who earlier designed it. No, it's very important. Our calls to CC will increase, etc., etc. But when we showed concise and crisp copies, we were able to help users and with no negative impact on any of the metrics which we thought it may have. The last but not the least is about reducing the elements of negative psych. When I say negative psych, for example, things like this you may not be able to get. So for example, if I have to highlight it, okay, you may not get a 30-day return period. It should be communicated, but it should not be like it should be highlighted on your face. If the person is not able to get services like try and buy, we would probably not specifically speak about highlighting it. We will say it, but more in a subtle way. If we really have a long, if it's a marketplace order and it may take 15 days for you to get the product, that may not be the first thing we highlight on the address page. We will sort the products in a way that you see that the items start arriving by this much of time. The first item you may get it in 3 days. So that is something which we'll highlight, then saying that, okay, you will get this item, this specific item in 15 days. So that's what I mean by saying that reduce the elements of negative side. Yeah, so I think with this, I will end this part of the session, and probably we'll move to Q&A part.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ankit. That was quite detailed and very, very relevant. So let's have some questions. There are two ways we can do question answers. One is we can go through the chat, or we can just ask people to use the raise hand feature and ask the questions. But we'll start with people who have written down questions. So who has written the first question? Saurabh Gupta. Hey Saurabh, do you want to ask your question?
I go to the chat part?
Yeah, I'm just, yeah, you can just keep it on the screen also. So the first
is from Shruti, right?
Okay. We can start with that. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the segmentation of test data if A beats B by 10%? So yeah, I don't know what you mean by segmentation. Do you, is it possible for me to communicate one by one? And can they speak up as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Ankit. Shruti
Right.
here. I'm here. What I meant was if the user segmentation of your test data is done. I mean, how do you segment the users that are coming in? I mean, now I know that you do it by dividing the device IDs. We used to do that by dividing GUIDs for Snapdeal. But if there is a very small margin by which they've won, which I now know that your statistical significance is a little different. So this question was when I was hypothesizing that A has beaten B by 10%. How do you segment what test data went in to beat B by 10%, considering A was your people who are putting test?
Sure. So typically, how or the good way to do A/B test is not to or keep the both the A and B or test and control as random as possible and as similar to each other as possible. So if let's say the test users has only city from Lucknow and you're trying something in Lucknow, probably the control should also have users only from Lucknow, so that you're trying to keep them as similar to each other as possible. And one way to do it is, I think we learned from Facebook, is that keep it as open as possible. So when we run an experiment at Myntra, we try to give it to entire 50% of the users and see what were the metrics on the users who interacted with that and what was the metrics on the platform level. And we try to make sure that the more and more number of users probably interact with it. So if I'm personalizing a widget, I will make sure that I have one similar widget which I can show it for Delhi, Lucknow, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, etc. So that helps me cover the entire width or the reach to be very high and still personalize. And then I will probably, when I'm analyzing, I may say that, okay, this widget is really helpful for Lucknow and Ahmedabad. And then from that, I can learn that, okay, maybe this kind of widget is more useful in tier 2 cities and not in metros. So that's how I analyze, or we analyze, the results of an experiment. But if you really have to do it for a smaller set of users, make sure that you have cohesive or similar set of users in both test and control. And if you are reaching statistical significance on that smaller set of users, then you know that, okay, the change which you actually brought in caused the, so it's always a cause and effect, right? So this particular change lead to a 10%. And by the way, 10% you were saying less, I would say 10% is a very big number in terms of expected outcome.
Yeah, in terms of X number versus Y number, a 10% difference would be like any variable. Thank you. I also have two more, but I would not want to hog the whole time. You can go ahead and take others.
Okay. So Deepak has, okay, that is around, I think. Saurabh Gupta, curious about device ID. Does it mean that a user using a device which is not part of the experiment will not get the treatment? So, okay. So Saurabh, what happens is most of our experiments run on mobile app. So if a user is opening the app, it's mandatory to know that the person has a device ID. So if you're running an experiment on mobile apps, whether it's Android and iOS, we will get device ID. So if a person who is visiting the platform on desktop probably will not see the experiment at all. The next question from Abhishek is about what is the statistical significance for? Statistical significance is to make sure that the change which I am seeing or the outcome which I am seeing is because of this change. So to answer basically the problem between causation and causality. So was this the cause which actually resulted in this particular change? Is the correlation of success being successful is actually because of this change or not? So that's why statistical significance gets very important. If I am saying that 90% significant, is this experiment is 90% significant, I can fairly confidently say that this change which I am making, whether making the product page or the button larger or in color red, and I'm seeing a significant uptake in CTRs, I can say the CTRs, I'm 90% sure that the change of 90% the 1% change in CTR is because of changing it into color red. So I'm 90% significant. Always scientists and all use this terminology of statistical significance to showcase the success or failure. When we say that test one change at a time, do we mean running one test at a time or having one hypothesis for one version? So the second part of it. So you can have 200 feature or experiments running at another platform at a given time. But what I mean by one change is, let's say there are two ways I can increase the CTRs on product page. I can make it color red, I can make it larger, I can completely hide the wish list. So there are three possible ways. But if I have to decide, I will, because all these experiments are around similar hypothesis, so I would test only one of them at a time. If I do two experiments on the button and around that area at a same time, it will, they can pollute the results. I don't know, some of the users will be in a bucket and versus test of others. I may not be able to see or measure the effectiveness of my results correctly.
So Ankit, in this case, would you be like okay running the same experiment for 4 different versions, or like one control set and 4 different versions, or running different tests altogether?
It depends on my traffic. So there are cases, for example, if I'm running on product page, okay, so then maybe take a pause and tell you how we do it. So for each and every layer, so for us, product page is a layer, for example. We know that on an average, if I'm not doing it in test, this is the conversion rate of users who go from product page to checkout. This particular number helps me identify what is my base conversion. Based upon the calculators which are available freely on internet, I can estimate this is the minimum number of sample size I need to make sure I reach statistical significance. If I get a lot of traffic, let's say millions of users each day, it's okay to run more number of variants A, B, C, D, because I know in a month's time, I will have decent amount of traffic and I will be able to reach statistical significance. But if I am a smaller company, I may not get that kind of traffic. And if I create more number of buckets, it will take longer for me. It's not right or wrong. It's just about that you may have to run the experiment long enough to reach that kind of sample size. So you have to do a trade-off in that case. In our case, we never do more than 3 variants. So there will never be more than ABC.
Got it. Thanks.
What is the industry average of successful A/B testing? So well, I have when I spoke to Netflix or Facebook and all, so I have seen, or even in the crosstalks, I have seen 20%, 25% is a decent enough successful. I would say higher side, 25% is a very good success rate. What percentage of users on which experimentation is carried out on before rolling the features to all users? How do you choose the user set for the above question? So we don't choose it. The user set is completely random. We make sure it's random and there's no biasness. If any kind of users, and when we analyze the experiment later on, we make sure that the distribution of tier 2 cities is equal, distribution of different versions of apps is equal in the bucket. And different, so we make sure that it's as random as we can. So we don't try to choose a specific set of users. And the percentage of users carried upon is defined by the sample size calculator. I can share an online tool. I think it's there on Optimizely, which can tell you this is, if your base conversion is X and you are looking to increase your conversion by Y, what is the minimum number of sample size of users you should run it to. So that gives us a guardrail or benchmark for us. How is your approach towards understanding psychology of users while testing? Like how and what psychological influences you make? So I think some of them are based upon our learnings by reading a lot of blogs, speaking to a lot of people. There are a couple of psychological related papers also. For example, psychology of pricing. If you, for example, show the pricing in larger or a bigger font, what is the impact? If you use comma, what is the impact? If you use currency symbol, what is the impact? And many others like this. Similarly, the colors you use. So if you have to imbibe positive psych, you probably use colors like green. If you have to bring in that element of surprise, you use certain type of colors. If you have to really highlight something that kind of warning, you need probably a cinnamon or a red kind of colors. So these are something which are available if you read across different blogs. There is a certain set of psychological inferences which we built over a period of time by doing experiments. When we see, okay, by doing highlighting shipping related benefits, we saw an uptake. That means shipping or additional benefit is something which users like. So why not start highlighting it wherever people are getting free shipping? Let's not call it free shipping. Let's say strike off 149 and then call it free next to it, so that they really know the value of free shipping. So that comes over a period of time and based upon the successful experiments. The next question is stratified ramping. I don't know what is the question. Yeah, I mean, we do stratify.
Hey Ankit, Shiva here. I have one question. So you said you're doing 200 experiments in the last 20 months. I want to know how do you document and store the results so that you don't repeat, or sometimes a new team member comes and they found the same idea that has been used before. So how do you manage and document these experiments?
So usually when we are creating an experiment or a feature, we use Jira to document it. And that is a tool which we use to communicate with engineering and design as well. In the same tool, we also document what was the outcome. So when we are analyzing an experiment, we go through our success metrics and what was secondary metrics. That particular slides are then tagged back to the Jira ID. So users can actually go back and refer them. At the same time, we also have a Confluence page where we monthly update that these are the number of experiments did and briefly tag it to the relevant Jira, that this is where they can go and check the outcome.
Yeah, thanks.
How to carry out A/B tests in B2B SaaS products. So I think the philosophy or methodology remains the same. So a lot of examples which I was giving on pricing models are more relevant for B2B SaaS products. They have, let's say, when you're onboarding a user, showing certain pricing models, you can try different variants, different colors, different way in which you highlight benefits, or different ways in which you highlight the pricing. That's one way to A/B test during if the person is still user and not customer. But if the person is a customer, I think your question is made around if now it's a viewing and pairing customer, how do I test certain A feature versus B? Correct. So I think even in that case, the methodology remains fairly similar. So you want to show this information in this form, in this particular screen, or maybe you want to keep it concise. So one way, for example, is if you're saying details of tool tips and all, you can either keep the entire document there, or let's say a glimpse of 4 lines, and then when a person click on view more, then the entire text is expanded. You can still do the thing. The only difference is maybe you will not have that kind of sample size. But in that case, it's okay, because the difference between the two buckets will be very stark. So when we talk about sample size, you will see I think for this actually I have to take a more longer to answer this. When we use a sample size calculator, you have specific different sample size calculators for SaaS products, because in those situations, the conversion rate or minimum detectable effect will be much different from a B2C product. And hence the way you conduct or the sample size reaches is very different. And let's say if you do not have millions of users, you have only 100 users, but the change, if even 20% of the change, will be tremendous. So you may not need actually millions of users to say it. You can say it only 1 out of 10 did it, but that person behavior is consistent. So that's another element which we use when the experiments are not reaching statistical significance. So in B2B products, in areas where I'm not able to reach statistical significance, I look for consistency. If the test is continuously weeks on weeks increasing and keeping the uplift, it's fair to say that the particular variant has won.
Okay. Thank you.
How do you decide on time frame for which A/B testing should be done? 6 to 8 weeks, what I heard you mentioned. So 6 to 8 weeks is not the time period for which we run the experiment. It can be longer or smaller based upon if the feature is running towards statistical significance or not. 6 to 8 weeks was the time period it takes for us to actually conceptualize and make the feature live on the platform. So 6 to 8 weeks is a standard time on which we will first think about a feature and then roll it out to our users. So that's what we mean by 6 to 8 weeks. So there's no industry standards for it. For different team sizes, it may take smaller or longer. It totally depends on the sample size. I will share the sample size calculator, and based upon the sample size, you may take smaller or longer. Any book you would recommend on A/B testing to a novice? I would recommend a couple of blog posts, I would say. I have not read any book on A/B test, but a lot of blog posts on A/B testing. And yeah, if you go to Optimizely, Visual Website Optimize, these are the kind of companies who will constantly read about or write about it. You can read there, or you can actually go through a lot of YouTube videos around this. In an organization, will there be only one experiment running at a time, concurrent experiment in parallel? Yeah, so there are parallel experiments running at any given time. So one person may be having a hypothesis on the size of the button or the color of the button. The other person may have a hypothesis on what kind of size of images we should show. The other person may have a hypothesis on what is the kind of copy we should use in displaying serviceability. So all these experiments can run in parallel. However, we make sure that if a person is running an experiment on buttons specifically, then only one experiment at a time goes on buttons. So that is something we coordinate with cross teams, that on one particular layer and area, there is only one person or a team doing an experiment. Ankit, could you please share literature sources on psychology of pricing? Yeah, I will share that. Okay. Any experiences on multivariate testing? So I think one of the guardrail which I mentioned is one change at a time. So yeah, so I do not recommend doing a multivariate testing for A/B tests specifically. The reason is you will not be able to establish causality. If this was the reason which led to this change, if you change too many factors, you cannot know to whom you actually attribute it to. So that's why we don't do that. So what tool does Myntra use? We have an internal tool. It was instrumental in getting it built. We call it Morpheus. Yeah, all pages are testable. And there are obviously certain metrics which we have to calculate offline. Not all the metrics are available in this tool Morpheus. We do a lot of offline analysis to gain insights on secondary metrics. do you look at convergence of AA? We used AAB testing for 40. Yeah, so at any given time to measure the efficacy of a platform, at a regular interval, we do run AA tests, but we don't do AAB. We do run AA test on different layers of the platform and see if we are seeing any statistically significant outcome. So, by God's grace, we have never seen that, okay, AA test outcome was statistically significant. So we faced this challenge in initial days. We were able to identify the problems, and since last 1 year, we have never, or more than 1 year, we have never faced that AA test are reaching statistical significance. Okay.
Thank you, Ankit, for answering all the questions. Is there any other question that anybody would like to ask? If not, then we'll end the session. Yes, there's a question from Rohit. Let's take this as the last question.
Do you split the samples beforehand to check if there are any differences? No, we do not. We make sure our samples are equally distributed between test and control at app launch itself. So whenever a user launches the app, we check if the person is already assigned to a controller test bucket or not. Otherwise, we flip a coin and say, okay, this person goes to test. And that's how we distribute our users in test and control bucket. So yeah, we do not inherently put any biases or filters to put users in test and control, unless we are running experiments on specific type or cohort of users. So let's say I'm running experiment only for men. In that case, I would wait actually for user to log in, and among that, let's say only 20% of the users I am able to establish whether the person's gender. In that case, the sample size will not be at the app launch. It will be when we identify a user's gender, and then we distribute the user between gender. So men, 50% of the users who are identified as men will see the experiment, and the other 50% who are identified as men will not see the experiment. So that's how we distribute our users.
Hi Ankit, this is Rohit here. I just asked this question.
Yeah.
So why I asked this is, so I worked at Zivame recently as a product manager. So there, I mean, it was hard after a point to cut out all biases, because you have to cut on various factors, right? Like you spoke of tier 2 city split. Gender might be one. Device ID, because each device, I mean, not device ID, device type, because iOS might spend more than Android, for example, right? So we would see not statistically significant percentages, but we would see differences. So that's why I was asking, it's all, I mean, we felt it was impossible to get a perfectly bias-free split, which is why I was asking that.
So yeah, if you try to go very deep into a particular dimension, then obviously there you will see in some of the bucket there will be certain tilt or bias. So we try in the best of our abilities, but it will never be, let's say, if I look for tier, maybe there is a device angle to it. If I look for device, maybe there's a device type angle to it. That Xiaomi devices are more tilted in one of the buckets. There's a limited amount of energy we can go into. So that's why we look at. So the way we nullify this is that we look at the success or failure at a platform level, not at a cohort level. We will see that of all the users, we don't see that, okay, users who reached PDP or product pages, what was the impact on them? We look at, okay, as soon as the user was assigned to a bucket at the app launch, what is the difference between both of these two? That's how we try to say, okay, even if there is a biasness in one of the factors, that may be just a one-time occurrence. It may not be impacting the overall results. But I think, I think Anuj is still there, right? Anuj Gupta.
Anuj is there, he's still there.
I think now Yash is also there at Zivame, so he would know.
Yeah, he's also coming.
So yeah, Yash and me worked on a lot of projects together, and He will
Okay.
also is aware of the entire framework we built for A/B test. So
Okay.
feel free to ask him.
Yeah.
Ramat Gupta. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Ankit.
Okay, everyone, can we have all of you on unmute for 5-10 seconds, and can we have a round of applause for Ankit?
Thank you guys. Very nice.
Uh,
Thank you so much.
See, that's max we can do in a web round of applause. But thank you so much, Ankit. What I really liked about this session was that it was very hands-on. It was very practical. I took away a bunch of interesting points from it, and I'm sure that everybody else did also. The way you answered the questions, the way you kept it very, very execution specific was superb. Thank you everyone for joining the session, and thank you once again, Ankit, for taking the session.
Thank you, Chandan.
And Divakar, thank you for organizing it.
Yeah,
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, and feel free to ask me anytime on the Slack channel or otherwise. Yeah, I hope I was able to answer, but I think I will be able to share insights in future as well. I think one of the things I have to do is share that paper on pricing psychology. So I'll find it and share with you guys.
You should definitely put those things in the Goodreads section of
Yes.
of the community, and
Yeah.
I'm sure people can continue to discuss things there.
Sure.
Okay.
Cool, man. Thank you guys. Thanks for your time, for listening. And yeah, it was nice to interact with you all.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Have a nice weekend. Stay safe.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ankit.